Land of the Free.
Land of the Free.
That was a play that Jack Cornwell wrote in my New York Simon studio, and that was about 18 years ago. And you said, Raj, we're doing something about the slaves in the area, and the Amistad is going up the Hudson, and you got anything on the Amistad? And I said, just so happened I have a little play.
Another one on my
just
sleeve,
happened
right?
a little play, and it was really kind of exciting to have that ship on right at Poughkeepsie Harbor, using it as a backdrop, and having those slaves, the people that were playing the slaves, come from that ship, and the audience hearing the music coming. It was, I think that the idea of doing plays outdoors, doing plays on the site other than the theater, really does involve an audience, and maybe for many people that aren't used to going to theater, gets them away from what they consider the formality of being in a dark auditorium watching actors away from them, and I find that very exciting.
I do too.
Yeah.
Now you're going to be in the next year's quadricentennial celebration. You're doing a pageant again. This is on the building of the shipyards, of the Continental shipyards, and Poughkeepsie's involvement in terms of the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
This is going to be a different one, isn't it? You're down on the waterfront again, but this is actually creating
on the water,
back on the water, creating for people a history that has been forgotten in terms of Poughkeepsie's role in shipbuilding in the Revolutionary War.
Well, again, Nancy, this is exciting because it covers the history of our area, and I myself had forgotten, having been brought up in New York City and then Westchester, that there's a little old place called Dutchess County, that, and a little river called the Hudson River that goes farther than 125th Street in Manhattan. And the whole mid-Hudson Valley, there's tremendous history. And I think our Hudson River, for Poughkeepsie and for this whole area, makes this area incredibly unique. This particular play that we're doing, Nick Conti has written a wonderful first draft that we're now developing. For me, the play is not only about the history of the Revolutionary shipyard, which is in itself something that I knew very little about, even though I was a history major, and how important it had been to the Revolution and the turning point of the Revolution in a way, the fact that Washington gave orders for Poughkeepsie to build these frigates and then send them out into the middle of the Hudson off Poughkeepsie and sink them to be a blockade.
Right. So
that the British could not come up from New York and down from Albany, and this became a major part of turning the war around. Well, I think that in itself is interesting, but the other thing that interests me about this particular play is the idea, and we're working on this now, of Americans, then and now, having diverse opinions.
Right.
And you and I talked about this, the whole idea of change. This country, I'm very proud to be an American, but particularly my family, as yours did, came during the revolutionary times. My family was one of the early Jewish families in the 16th century in New York, and
mine was Huguenot.
Yeah, and so it has great meaning to me to do this kind of work. But the idea of this country, with all its problems, being a place where you can have a different opinion is partly why I'm very excited about this play and this period, because what some people don't remember is that it wasn't just America against the king and England. It was truly Americans against Americans during the war. There was the Tories, and then there were the Americans who were fighting against the king. And my own family was divided right in half between Tory and Americans. I know this from my own family history. So in this play, we're going to try, as we did in the deciding vote, to have the conflict between a Tory and an American over that these frigates are going to be sunk, and arguing. And to me, this goes on in our history. The different opinions and the forward thinking. People come to this country because it's a place where you can have new opinions, you can have change, and that's what makes this a special country, I think.
Now, you know, this is going to lead me to the next point. One of the things, now then you turn into a producer again, after the director. But this book, Tim and Tom, Tom Driessen, and you're going to take another role in August, and that is we're going to introduce people to vaudeville in the city of Poughkeepsie. We're going to move from the Revolutionary War to about 1908. Vaudeville, a place called the Duchess Theater. Now it's the Chance. And you're bringing Tom Driessen in from, does a lot of stand-up stuff for The Tonight Show.
Tom is I hope people out there will have known from The Tonight Show and also from David Letterman as a comedian. He also is a fine entertainer who had spent 14 years working with Frank Sinatra as his opening act and working in Las Vegas and around the world with him. And I've had a very good time developing a play of his with him that he wrote called Shining Shoes and Sinatra, which we're going to be trying out of town, out of Poughkeepsie, as we say. And then we're going to be doing it at the Chance the end of August as a tryout here. And I'm very much looking forward to that as well.
Just as a preface on that, a little pitch now, we're going to actually do some vaudeville. If you haven't been to the Chance, folks, and I know almost everybody's been, to the Chance at some time in their life, but it is still pretty much an old vaudeville hall.
That's a wonderful place.
It's a wonderful place. I mean, you can really play the audience there. And, we have some great theater here, but this is really one that you can play the audience. It's built for that.
It really
kind of fun, isn't it?
Well, it's one of the nicest theaters I've come across. I have to tell you, I've lived here 5 years, and until you brought me down there, I really had never gone into the Chance, because it's known for many people as being a place of rock music concerts.
Right.
And so I had never been to a concert there, and this was an eye-opener for me. It's a fantastic just facility for doing a show, and I'm hoping that this vaudeville thing will catch on, and that maybe we can do other theater projects there and help.
I think it's a great idea.
Bring up the whole downtown area, help do that.
Now we're going to Tom's act is going to be prefaced by Peter Muir, Dr. Muir, who's going to do some actual vaudeville.
Very talented composer.
Yeah, he is, and just a really good. I mean, that's his thing. The vaudeville, the rag, that's his era. It's an interesting book, and it's about Tim, Reid, and Tom Driessen. And you want to talk about changes. This is again the 1960s. Where you have an African American and a white comedian, and it was a now it's not a big deal, but at that time it was a big deal, wasn't it? Yeah,
I mean, it's a great book because it really is not so much about just show business, but it's really about, it's a chronicle of the political times of our country. I always thought of the 60s as this wonderful liberal time when everything was breaking through, but in fact a black and white comedy act was a very difficult thing in the 60s to have people accept. They finally actually had to dissolve the act. It created major problems. They played black clubs, they played white clubs, they went down south, they went north. They had problems all over. So for me, that was an education. We always think of the liberal, but it was not accepted, no. And there were many people that had problems. They were ahead of their times, no question about it.
Now, is Tom going to be talking at all about this book?
It's part of the show.
Great.
It's actually part of the show. In fact, a lot of it is in that book. And it's a wonderful book, by the way.
It's so interesting. Now, Tom Reid, now a lot of people know him from WKRP in Cincinnati.
Tim Reid was the lead with Lonnie Anderson, and KCRP, I guess, in Cincinnati, right? And Frank's Place, which is a cult show that many people remember, which never caught on, but is one of the great television series. He was the producer of that as well as the lead actor.
What is Tim Reid doing now? What is his?
He produces and writes television and film. Yeah.
Wow. Now he does not want to go into. He didn't want to do the stand-up thing. That
Interesting.
Tom is.
He did it. He and Tom actually met in schools. They were doing of young kids who were having problems, and the kids went up to them and just said, "You guys are funny." And that got them going, and they really developed the act themselves. But Tim was really the one who, although he was very good at it, really always wanted to be an actor. Tom always wanted to be a stand-up. And so in a way, the act in a way broke up because Tim had had enough of stand-up, really, and wanted to go into his own acting
Right.
and producing.